Hey, editing Simon here. So as you might see, I have moved houses since recording the video. So that's why there's so little B-roll in this video, just because I really ran out of time to shoot it before moving. So excuse me if this, if actually watching this video is a little bit boring. And as is tradition in this hobby, it has turned out a little bit longer than I expected. So I guess as is tradition, go grab your favorite snack and drink and enjoy it, preferably as a podcast. There is some B-roll, but just not too much of it. And yes, that is a bloweye, and I will not elaborate further. All right, back to Past Simon. Hello lads, ladies and everyone else. Simon here, and I welcome you back to Vibe Check. Today we're going to be checking out another retro gaming emulation handheld, and this time it's the TrimUI Brick. Now, this device has a lot in common with the device that we reviewed last time, the Miyoo Mini version 4, in that they are both extremely compact, though the Brick is noticeably larger, still a very, very small console. But yeah, it's a device that's significantly more powerful, that's much better built. Like, this device feels amazing in the hand. It's chunky, it's heavy, it's got a metal backplate on the back, and then the plastic that it uses is very high quality. It's got a screen that's even higher resolution and even larger in terms of pixel density than the Miyoo Mini V4, which is already fantastic. And on paper, this device has everything going for it. And I don't like it. Well, this is Vibe Check, and let me tell you why the TrimUI Brick does not pass it. Okay, cutting it in real quick, because I forgot to mention it while recording the previous take. The performance of this thing, that's quite important, isn't it? What can it do? So the TrimUI Brick can run a ton, and I mean it, a ton of games. First of all, it's really good for Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance. It's kinda good for Nintendo DS, which I will get into why later. But it's fantastic for all of the Game Boys and the DS, sort of. It can run all of your home console, Super Nintendo, Sega Mega Drive, like whatever, Sega Master System, PlayStation 1 games, no problem. And it can also run a fair bit, but not all of, Nintendo 64, Sega Dreamcast, and PSP games. The last part is the most impressive, but also like the most flawed, because it doesn't really do a great job of running PSP games. I would say about half of the PSP library is playable. But we'll get into performance later, and for now, let's go back to me gushing about the design and vibes on this thing, because after all, this is Vibe Check. So, Past Simon, back to you. So, in reality, there is so much good about this console, and I really want to love it. There is just one reason, but one sort of major one, why I don't end up actually preferring it over pretty much any of the other options in the price range. So first of all, let's start with the positives and the first things that you will notice while picking it up. The design is stunning. The console looks great. I've got the red model here, but it's also available in black, white, and purple. And although I am normally a giant fan of white electronics, this time I would actually say white is probably the weakest color, probably tied with purple. The black is just classy, and the red one really stands out. It's this like deep but very saturated red. I absolutely adore it. It looks amazing. It kind of brings back memories. Back in the day, I had this phone from HTC. It was called the U11, and people were calling it the Iron Man phone because it would like change colors from red to orange to gold, depending on how the light hit it. This device doesn't quite do that, but like it really does remind me of that phone. It looks stunning. And yeah, I would say all of the color options are good. The red one is my favorite, hence why I picked it. But there are two important things to mention when it comes to color options. There is quite a lot to talk about here, surprisingly. First of all, there is a secret forbidden color option that's only available after you buy 2 of those devices. I saw on Reddit a few weeks ago, someone posted the results of swapping the buttons from the white one to the purple one. And that looks amazing. Now, the reason why I don't like the white one so much is because the buttons are gray. And it just doesn't look as clean as it would with like actually white or even black buttons. But when you put those gray buttons on the purple one, holy, this really reminds me of my childhood Indigo Game Boy Advance. And if I knew this, I would have probably put those 2 just to have access to that colorway because it's that good. So I'm kind of glad I didn't, considering how I ended up feeling about the device. And there is 3 more color options when you take into account the difference in material. So this device, the regular brick, is made of plastic, really good quality plastic, but still plastic, with just this small metal backplate. Well, a few weeks ago, TrimUI also released the Brick Hammer, which is an upgraded version of the brick. There's really not much different between them. The Brick Hammer has better speakers, but most importantly is made out of metal. And here are 3 colorways. I really wish they would make red, but they didn't. But what we do have is still excellent. The weakest is probably the gunmetal. It's fine, but it's just a wee bit boring. The next 2 are great. There is rose gold, which is not what I would pick, but it does look fantastic. And my girlfriend almost wants to start playing on handhelds just so she can have it. That's how pretty it looks to her. And the electric green one, holy, it's like probably one of the most beautiful handhelds that I have ever seen. Good job in the design department, TrimUI. I really appreciate the work that they are doing because they are clearly doing something different and it's clearly working. So hats off for that, TrimUI. That's really good. But all right, we've talked about the colors, we've talked about the build quality. In terms of size, it's easily pocketable. Like, it's really small. It's probably like the most pocketable console on that I own because it's small enough to never bother me in my pocket, but it's sturdy enough to where I don't fear putting it in my pocket. I still don't really do that. I don't really care about putting those handhelds in my pocket because when I do play them, I play them for a longer time. And when I don't play them, I usually don't play them for like half a day at least. So having them in my pocket doesn't really change anything for me, but I know a lot of people are into that. So when it comes to that, like, this device is probably like the best pocket handheld that I have tried because it's just sturdy and it's also really tiny. Like the Miyoo Mini and the Miyoo A30 are both smaller, and I actually do prefer having the A30 in my pocket because it really feels like I don't have anything in there. But you know, like the Miyoo devices are made out of like the cheapest plastic imaginable. It has its charm. I don't hate them for it. As in fact, if you watch my Miyoo Mini V4 review, a link up there, you'll know why I love it. But yeah, the material quality on the brick makes me much less scared of putting it in my pocket when I have to. Okay, so that's the build quality stuff. I spent a lot of time on it because it's really important to me. One thing, like if this is the first video from me that you're watching and you're wondering why I spent 8 minutes talking about like the design of it and stuff, Vibe check is kind of different from your usual YouTube reviews because there are a lot of people who will focus on the performance on the software and everything like that, and I do that too to some extent because that is still undeniably important. But if you're looking to know just like what's the best performance per dollar console on the market, there are a lot of different reviewers you can watch. What I focus more on is the experience of actually using this device. Like for example, with the Brick, I've had this device for 2 months before I decided to make a review because I feel like, hey, even if I don't like it, it deserves a shot. And I've played probably like 60 to 80 hours of actual gameplay on it. So I think that makes me pretty qualified to review it in terms of the experience. I will still touch on performance and software options and stuff, but this is not the most important for me. Okay. So when it comes to the unboxing experience, well, first of all, you actually do get a box, and it's a pretty nice one. It's got the black and white model on the box. What's even more important is what you get inside the box, because you get the console, you get a charging cable, you also get 2 replacement sets of shoulder buttons, which that's a really nice touch. For example, with the stock ones, I found them a bit hard to press, but one of the options that was in the box ended up being perfect for me and much more comfortable. So I really do appreciate them for including that and allowing you to customize the device to your liking. Hats off for that, TrimUI. That was a really nice play from you. And the most important thing about what's in the box is what's not in there. Namely, an SD card. And that is good. That is good. Because most of those cheap Chinese handhelds come with like absolute e-waste tier SD cards that will fail on you after like half a year of use. Like any of those devices that you get, you should never use the stock SD card, except for like the Magic X devices. They've been including some like really decent SanDisk and Kioxia cards, but the like all of the other ones just always get a good SD card from like Samsung, SanDisk. Those are the most popular brands, but even like the lesser known ones, but still like name brands like Kingston, Goodram is a local one here in Poland that I do appreciate a lot. I had an SSD from them for 10 years and it was perfect. It still works. It is in my sister's gaming PC now. So yeah, just get a good SD card. It's not a big expense. And I do appreciate them for not including like an e-waste tier SD card that you would throw out anyway. Especially since most of those SD cards come prepackaged with games, and you know my stance if you watched my previous video. I don't mind piracy. I will never judge you for pirating games yourself. I personally, the way I acquire those games is I buy them whenever I can, and if I can't, then I don't worry about it. If like the game is not on sale, like if the company doesn't sell the game anymore, then I feel fine downloading it. If the game company does sell the game, I buy whatever version is available and then download the ROM, right? But, you know, everybody has a different tolerance, but the thing that crosses the line for me is when those Chinese companies include actually pirated games on it. Some of them are indie games that are still on sale. Like, for example, I saw some units of the TrimUI Brick come with games like Celeste, which is an indie game from a solo developer that they just pirate and put on it, which is not okay. So I am glad that it doesn't come with an SD card by default. You can, of course, buy them with SD cards from different stores, but honestly, just get your own SD card and just put your own games on there. You don't need 1,000 games. You just need to download like 20 of your favorites. It really isn't hard. So yeah, but speaking of accessories, there are two that I think having at least one of is also necessary. Of course, the SD card is a must-have, but two accessories that I would really strongly consider to get at least one of, depending on your use case. If you want to put the device in your pocket, definitely consider getting a screen protector. They are incredibly cheap on AliExpress. You can get a 3-pack for like €3, so that's nothing really. It will protect your screen, but most importantly, it will stop it from getting so fingerprinty, because the stock screen really doesn't have a good oleophobic layer, so it gets really gross and fingerprinty whenever you touch it, and having a screen protector prevents that. So even if you do decide to buy the second accessory that I would advise you to buy, you should probably still consider the screen protector, but it's absolutely mandatory if you're planning on putting it in your pocket, because you don't want to damage it. The second accessory is a case. Now, this is the official TrimUI case, and I love it. It's very nice. It's sturdy on the outside. Inside, it has this felt material that will really protect the console from getting any scratches and stuff. There is this rubber that holds the console in place, which I can take it or leave it. I prefer when it's not there, but that's fine. And also, this case is double the height, so you can put your headphones or your additional SD card or your charging cable or whatever in there. In general, I would prefer a slimmer case that doesn't have this pouch, but it's there, so if you need it, it's cool. Yeah, I would definitely advise you on getting the case, because if you want to put the device on your bag, at least you will protect it from getting scratched up and banged up. Not that it needs it, because as I already said, it's a very sturdy device, but it's so good looking that I would honestly just want to take care of it and make sure that it doesn't get all dinged up. So yeah, in my opinion, getting both a case and a screen protector is a really good choice for the TrimUI Brick. So to sum it up, you get some really nice accessories in the box, and there is still some accessories that you have to buy, but TrimUI does provide a really nice case, which is a bit on the expensive side, because I saw it from anywhere between 10 to even €15, depending on the store, but I would say it's worth it. So yeah, I would definitely say that a good SD card is necessary, and a case and the screen protector are highly recommended. All right, let's move into software options now. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the hardware, but what's arguably just as important is the software running on the console. So we've got a good few options here, but surprisingly, of the usual suspects, which like the operating systems that I would usually recommend on one of those devices, like Rocknix, Miyoo OS, Onion OS, are not available for this, at least yet. But there is still quite a few of them. And starting off with the stock operating system, which is actually surprisingly decent. It is configured surprisingly well. Again, for stock operating system on those devices standards, it is configured really well. The stock operating system is something I would genuinely feel happy using if it didn't commit some heinous crimes against design. Yeah, it's kinda awful. Like the icons and stuff, they just look bad. But the stock operating system is a really nice platform to jump off of. And with just a few tweaks, like adding a different theme, changing the icons, and tweaking a few of the settings, you can get this to a pretty decent place. And that's where StockMix OS comes in. This is the operating system that I finally settled on after testing quite a few of them. It is simply fantastic. It's just a set of tweaks to the stock operating system that makes some platforms run better, that adds some options to tweak the device, that adds a few different themes. The theme that I'm using right now is actually one I had to download from a different build of StockOS. In general, the StockMix operating system is really nice. I've been enjoying using it, and it uses RetroArch, which, as we'll discuss soon, that's a good thing, because the next couple of options, PackUI and NextUI, are both improved versions of MiniUI. Now, MiniUI is an operating system I used to love when I was just getting into emulation, but it does have some problems. Mainly, it's a really minimalist system, and that's nice. It looks good, it has a unified menu system, and in general, it is a very simple and easy to use operating system that just works. And I would probably like it way more if not for the fact that it's missing a few features, which nowadays I've been depending on, like, hey, Wi-Fi, or, for example, scraping the artwork, just to have box art on the device. Stuff like this. That's, might be more or less important to you, but the main reason why I don't use MiniUI is because of how it handles save games. Now, I play a lot of Pokemon recently, and the way I do this is I will, for example, play Pokemon Crystal on the Miyoo Mini, or like Pokemon Silver on the Miyoo Mini, and then I would play Pokemon Crystal on the TrimUI Brick, and then I would play Pokemon Gold on another one, just to get a complete Pokédex basically in those games, because they have like version exclusives and stuff. So that's what I have been doing. But the reason why I stopped using MiniUI on the Brick is because, well, MiniUI just has a different save format than RetroArch, and you can change it quite easily. You can just rename the file basically from .sav to .srm, and that just works. But yeah, that's just one annoying step to do every time. PackUI actually allows you to convert them automatically in the OS, which almost fixes every issue I had. But then I also like to use sync things, just so I can synchronize those saves to my PC and just do my Pokemon trading on the PC, because it's just more convenient. And the file structure that MiniUI uses is just too different, and unlike RetroArch, you can't customize it, so that's why I stopped using it. It's a very nerdy reason. In general, MiniUI and PackUI are very, very nice operating systems, and this is what I would recommend to most people. But if you're a power user who is not afraid of diving into RetroArch and customizing things yourself, StockMix is my pick. Now, there is another option if you don't want to use the stock operating system, but you want a more robust custom firmware that's using RetroArch, and that's Nuli. And let me just say, I do appreciate all the work that Nuli developers are putting into their operating system. What I'm going to say is not in any way any criticism of that, because they are making the project as they see fit, and they are doing an amazing job, and they are doing this for free and sharing their work for free, just for the benefit of the retro emulation community. So in any way, I am not using this as a diss, but Nuli just kind of sucks, man. Like, I really want to like it. I really try to like it. But the problem with Newly is that it's so hard to change settings. Like, I'm the kind of guy who would just dive into RetroArch and just try to make the device work as I want it to. And Newly just overrides those changes that I make a lot of the time. That's why on the Anbernic XX lineup of handhelds, like the SP for example, I use Rocknix, which also runs emulation stations, which is the same UI as Newly, but is much less annoying about overriding the configurations you make in RetroArch. If you want, you can override almost any Rocknix behavior in RetroArch, which is not something that I can say about Newly, which just messes with my settings a bit too much. In general, if you're not a power user, you'll probably be fine, but if you ever dove deep into RetroArch and try to set the device up the way you want it to, it will just be annoying. That's why I don't recommend it. I think, like, for power users, stock mix is great, and for like just 90% of the people, Pack UI or Next UI will be fantastic. All right, let's come back to the hardware for a bit and talk about what's arguably the best part of this device: the screen. It is really good. It's basically an HD screen. I know there's some debate on whether 720p is HD or not. I generally say that it's not, but hey, whatever. For a screen this small, it's definitely a high definition screen. It's 1024 by 768, which is a resolution you might recognize from old computer monitors if you're old, like me. But yeah, like it's a very, very high resolution for a 3.2-inch display. The pixel density on this thing is crazy good, and it allows for some really, really good scaling options, which is fantastic for retro games because, well, the main issue I have with a lot of the screens on those devices, like for example, the 40XXV from Anbernic has a gorgeous 4-inch screen, but it's only 640 by 480, which means that, for example, scaling Game Boy Advance games on it is just a pain. Like, you have to use shaders to fix the image because you are forced to choose between either playing in a tiny window with black bars on the bottom, but like the game actually looking as the designers intended, or you can blow it up to, you know, a bigger window, but then the pixels look unbalanced and the game just looks rough, and you have to use shaders to fix that, and it doesn't really do as good of a job as just integer scaling it. And with the Brick having such a high resolution screen, you have options. If you want to have perfect visual quality, you can just integer scale most systems, and because this screen has so many pixels, it will generally produce a large image with minimal black bars for most systems, which is fantastic. But honestly, because, well, the pixel density is so large, you can just, you know, blow it up to full screen. Of course, not stretching, preserving the aspect ratio, because you are not a savage, I presume. You don't want to make Game Boy Advance games taller or Game Boy games super wide, do you? I would be judging. So yeah, you can just blow the games up to full screen, and honestly, the pixels still look plenty balanced. It's great. And actually, a hidden benefit of this screen is this is one of the only devices on the market that integer scales the Nintendo DS well. Now, obviously, the Nintendo DS had 2 screens and this only has 1, but if you're using only one Nintendo DS screen at a time, this has a perfect 4x integer scale of Nintendo DS, which means that you can play the games with perfectly balanced pixels with no black bars. It's great. Like, I've started playing Pokemon Diamond on it, and that's because I'm playing Platinum on my DS. I would never choose Diamond, just to be clear. I started playing Pokemon Diamond on the Brick, and honestly, it's a pretty good experience. Now, there is one major downside when it comes to DS games, which we'll get to when we talk about the performance. But yeah, like this screen is just fantastic when it comes to the resolution, and when it comes to the colors and black levels and contrast and all of that stuff, it's honestly not bad. Like the black levels, they are not OLED. They are not as good as the Miyoo Mini V4, but they're still plenty deep. They are not like super gray or ugly looking, and the colors are good too. They do pop out of the screen, not as much as the Miyoo Mini or an OLED display, right? But in general, yeah, it's a very, very nice screen. The only complaint that I would have about it is that, yeah, the minimum brightness is slightly too high, so playing it in bed can be a little bit too blinding. It's not a big deal, it's not much too bright, it's just a little bit too bright. So it's a minor complaint, but it's worth mentioning. On the other hand, maximum brightness is very good. So if you want a device to play outdoors, this is a fantastic pick. Most of those handhelds really can't do that. Like, I don't like playing my Nintendo DS. I have the DSi specifically, and I don't like playing it outdoors. I don't like playing my Miyoo Mini outdoors. I don't like playing most of them outdoors. But the Brick, I can do it, no problem. Maybe not in direct sunlight, but hey, that's still pretty good. Like when I'm just going outside my house and just playing it on the lawn, because I sometimes lay on the grass like a maniac, it's completely fine, which is not something I can say about most of those handhelds. So that's another huge plus. Okay, so we've got a ton of good things about this console here, and it's not gonna stop now, because now we're talking about the performance, and that's honestly really good for how cheap it is. Like, for context, you can usually get this console for around 50 to 60 euro, which is a very compelling price for something that's built this well and can run as many games as it can. Because, well, let's get into it. When it comes to handheld systems, Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, Game Gear, all of those, no problems whatsoever. They play beautifully on here. When it comes to home systems, PlayStation 1, Super Nintendo, Sega Mega Drive, no problems whatsoever. They play beautifully. Now, the next tier is when it starts getting dicey, but honestly, compared to the Anbernic XX handhelds, which are similar in terms of price, it is a little bit better. I'm saying a little bit because honestly, it's not a huge difference, but there is a difference. It's still not as good in terms of performance as the Rockchip 3566 chip that you couldn't find in like the Anbernic 353 line of devices, but the XX line, yeah, it's a little bit faster than that. And what this genuinely means for you is that you will be able to play a decent amount of Nintendo 64, Dreamcast, and PSP games on here. You probably won't want to do that though, because, well, there is no analog stick. There is a walk around basically where you can just set one of those function buttons to change between using the analog stick and the D-pad. Well, you know, when it comes to like what the D-pad is bound to, right? You can just simulate the analog stick with the D-pad, and that works fine. You can play a lot of games like that. So it's nice to have the option, and I would say like probably about 60 to 70% of Nintendo 64 and Dreamcast games will be playable on this. And when it comes to PSP, I will be absolutely honest with you, I haven't gotten the PSP emulator to work properly, because for some reason when playing it on StockMix, it would display half of the screen as just cut off, and that's where the settings are, so I wasn't able to configure it. I could probably fix it by diving into like configuration files and shit, but I just couldn't be asked to, because honestly, it's a 3.2 inch 4x3 screen. Playing PSP on it just just don't. When it comes to the performance of the chipset, I will just regurgitate what I found when playing with the TrimUI Smart Pro, which is basically about 50% of PSP games will play well. But if you're comfortable just, diving into the configuration of the emulator and trying some hacks and being okay with not having the perfect quality for those games, then you can probably get like 80% of them running, which is huge. I just honestly wouldn't do that. I can't be asked. I want to have a good experience, and that's not my definition of it. But yeah, like you can play some games, and some of the easier to run PSP games that I would actually, think about playing on this. Definitely more on the TrimUI Smart Pro, because that had a 16:9 aspect ratio, which is perfect for the PSP. Are like RPGs, because there is a lot of good RPGs on the PSP. Stuff like Persona 3 Portable, Is, The Oath in Volgana, the Trails in the Sky series, which I started playing but haven't really gotten deep into. Those are all games that are easy to run and will have no problems running on this processor. So again, if you are comfortable playing those text-heavy games on a really small screen, that's fine. That's fine. I won't judge you. Unless you stretch them, then I will. But whatever. And as I mentioned, the one device that this screen is actually perfect for is Nintendo DS. And this processor can run most DS games. I won't say 100% because I haven't tested that many. But of the ones I did test, every single one ran just fine, so take from that what you will. But of course, this only has one screen, and most importantly, it doesn't have a touch screen. Yeah, that's a little bit of an issue. You can cope. And for example, I was able to play DS games on the Miyoo A30 just fine, which has a weaker processor, and just the emulation quality wasn't great. But still, I've been playing through Pokemon Pearl on it and enjoying it because, well, it has an analog stick. So I was just using the analog stick to control the cursor. It's like, it's not perfect, it's not as good as having a touch screen, or definitely not nearly as good as having a touch screen with a stylus, but it's fine. And on the Brick, you can kind of do this. If you set up the hotkey to change the D-pad into analog stick mode, you can go into the settings for Drastic, which is the DS emulator, and just set them up so the analog stick controls the stylus, and that works sort of well. It's fine for the Pokemon games, to be honest, and those games really don't have much going on at two screens at the time. Well, you choose moves on the bottom screen, but as long as you can just, memorize the location of the moves, it's fine. And you can just use the hotkey to switch between screens, and those games aren't really fast-paced, so it's a fine experience. I wouldn't say I really enjoy it, definitely not when compared to devices that have analog sticks, and certainly not compared to devices with a touchscreen. But if you really want to play the Pokemon games on the DS, and probably not much else, because a lot of platformer games like Contra required to use two screens, and that just you can play like Super Mario, like New Super Mario Brothers probably, but yeah, you would have to be really choosy about games that mainly use one screen at a time. And but like, you can don't use the touchscreen too much, because controlling it with a D-pad is kind of a pain. But yeah, the screen is really good for DS, so you can, and I've been sort of enjoying Pokemon Diamond on it, so it's fine. It's fine for DS. If you want to play some Pokemon, honestly, it's a really good Pokemon machine. That much I can say. And honestly, it would probably be my favorite Pokemon machine. Like, when it comes to a device that I can just put in my pocket and have a good enough experience for Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, and Nintendo DS. yeah, the brick is really good. So yeah, yeah, like yeah, it's almost my perfect little pocket Pokemon machine. Because yeah, we've been talking about a lot of the good stuff, and honestly, that's because pretty much everything about this device is good, except for one thing, which is kind of a deal breaker for me, and it might be too, which is the controls. When it comes to a gaming console, I think the controls are one of the most important aspects, and sadly, those just kind of suck. They aren't terrible, they aren't unusable, but they are very clicky with short travel. The D-pad is honestly fine. The D-pad has just a little bit of travel, and this click is a little bit softer. So the D-pad I'm completely fine with. The shoulder buttons, when I change them to those ones, are honestly completely fine too. But it's the face buttons that are just like, they don't have any travel at all, pretty much. They are very clicky and kind of hard to press down on. And yeah, I'm a notorious clicky button hater, but I can enjoy a good clicky button when it's a soft click. For example, Nintendo handhelds. The DSi also has clicky buttons, and still, I don't prefer them. I would prefer the buttons from the DS Lite, which were like squishy membrane buttons. But honestly, with the nicer screens on the DSi and the ability to run custom firmware straight from the device, I prefer the DSi, even though it has clicky buttons, because the buttons are like soft clicky and don't take too much force to press down on. Now, the brick isn't as bad as some of the worst devices I have seen, namely the Anbernic 35XX, which has buttons that require even a little bit, not a huge bit, but a little bit more force than the ones on the brick, and it has a much worse D-pad. Like, honestly, that playing any kind of actiony game on the 35XX SP is a pain, which is a shame, because I really wanted to like this device, because look at it. It's so pretty, and I really wanted to like this device, but honestly, yeah, playing any game that has any amount of action and requires you to pivot the D-pad is just fatiguing. With the SP, I get tired after, like, honestly, 15 minutes to half an hour of playing with it. So if you ever had access to one of those devices, or preferably both, that will give you a decent idea on how the buttons on the brick work. So in general, they are not as bad as the 35XX SP, but they are not as good as something like the Nintendo DSi or the Nintendo Switch, or I don't know, the Retroid Pocket 5's D-pad that has even more travel than the one on the brick. They are fine, and if you don't mind clicky buttons with short travel, you will probably be fine. For me, it's just a bit too fatiguing. The D-pad I'm fine with, but the face buttons, I can play this device for like 45 minutes to an hour, and then I just have to put it down because my finger just starts hurting, and that's not nice. So yeah, that's the downside, really. It's a shame, because if the buttons were a little bit softer, I'm not saying you have to make them membrane buttons, although I would prefer it, but if they had just a little bit more travel, or just a little bit softer of a click, like the buttons on the DSi, I would be completely fine, and I would be in love with this device, and honestly, it would probably be my only budget handheld, because it's just so nice. But it can't, because, well, I can just pick up a Miyoo Mini, and yeah, it's smaller, it doesn't have as nice of a screen, although honestly, the colors are kind of better on it, and it is definitely cheaper when it comes to build quality, but the buttons just feel nice, man. Do you know what I'm saying? So I would much rather play on a console that actually brings me joy, instead of one that I have to begrudgingly tolerate. So yeah, that's the reason why the brick is ultimately not for me. But it might be for you. If you don't mind clicky buttons, There's honestly so much good about this device that I completely get why so many people are in love with it. And I wanted to love it too. I can't because the buttons just don't work for me, but I do understand why people love it. And I wish I could recommend it harder. And like, if you had the SP and you thought the buttons were fine, then those are a little bit better, so you'll be completely fine. But if you didn't, like, for example, I would say good litmus test. If you tried both the Nintendo DS Lite and one of the clicky Nintendo consoles like the DSi or the Switch, and you found that you prefer the clicky buttons on the Nintendo handhelds, you will be fine with the Brick. Those are not as good as Nintendo's, but they are not much worse. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, like, I really wish you guys could just take it in your hands and try it, because that would be the easiest way to judge. And honestly, over the course of those 2 months of trying to love this device, I did manage to tolerate it. So if I didn't have those other handhelds, I would probably be fine with it, but I do. So I will likely not be keeping the Brick, even though it's so gorgeous, man. So I want to keep it, but yeah. I mean, between the Miyoo Mini and the Anbernic 40XX and the Miyoo A30 and the DSi, there's honestly no reason for me to keep the Brick, even though I really want to. Especially, I really want this screen, because this screen is gorgeous and it scales the S well. So if only there was a handheld that had the same screen, but preferably a touch screen and membrane buttons, I would be very interested in it. Let's talk about alternatives. I will come back to the sentence I just said in a moment, but let's just talk about what is on the market right now and what I tested and what I can definitely recommend it to you. For example, if you want a pocketable console, I would probably recommend that you go with either the Miyoo A30 or the Miyoo Mini V4. My preferable option is the Miyoo Mini V4 because it's the only one of those handhelds that I can comfortably play one-handed. The Brick, I can sort of do one-handed gaming, but it's not as comfortable. Something bigger like the 35XX, it's like, yeah, I can do it, but it's just straight up uncomfortable. So yeah, but like the Miyoo Mini is just very comfortably a one-handed gaming device. So that's my preferred option. I generally do prefer vertical form factors, and it also helps that the screen on the Miyoo Mini V4 is much better. But the A30 has some upsides. It is the build quality is a little bit better than on the Mini. The buttons are just as nice, if not nicer. Honestly, they have a little bit more resistance to them than the Miyoo Mini buttons, and I do prefer it. It also has an analog stick. The screen is nowhere near as nice. It's a 640 by 480. I'm tired of this resolution, but it's fine. The screen is fine, unless you're playing Game Boy Advance games, which will just kind of look bad, but you can fix it with shaders. The screen is completely fine, and it has an analog stick, so if you want to play DS Pokemon games, it's easier. But yeah, still a very small console. It's still very pocketable. The screens on those are 2.8 inches, so noticeably smaller than on the TrimUI, but they are fine. Honestly, like they are small screens compared to the TrimUI, which I would say is like average size. But for Game Boy Color games, it's more than fine. For Game Boy Advance, it's a little bit small, but still completely doable. And for DS, yeah, it's fine. I don't mind. So yeah, in general, lovely devices. If you don't mind something a little bit bigger than the 35XX Plus, or if you prefer a comfortable form factor than the 35XXH, this is the 353M, but it's the same form factor. Those devices are great. They have a bit of a bigger screen, 3.5 inches instead of 3.2, but it's a lower resolution screen, so you won't get as nice of scaling options. But if you don't really care about those games looking perfect, you just want them to run and run well and have good controls, the Anbernic options are fantastic. And if you would actually prefer something bigger, then the 40XX-V is still probably my favorite like vertical budget handheld, because yeah, it can just play everything and it's just lovely. It's also got good build quality, not as good as the TrimUI, but really good, and the controls on it are fantastic. So yeah, the 35XX Plus is definitely the 40XXV sorry, is definitely a great pick. But let's talk about what I teased. There are two handhelds that have the same exact screen as the TrimUI Brick. One of them is the Powkiddy RGB20 Pro, which is a mouthful of a name, but it runs the RK3566 processor, which is a bit stronger than this one, so it will give you better performance for PSP, Dreamcast, and Nintendo 64. And it has analog sticks, and it has membrane buttons that are supposedly great. I haven't tested this device, but it looks fantastic. So the only downside is that it is ugly, and it is bigger than the Brick because it's much taller. Honestly, I kind of wish I got that one instead of the Brick, but yeah, the Brick was just too pretty, so I got the Brick. But yeah, like in general, the RGB20 Pro seems like a really good alternative. That is until recently, because recently XU Retro, which is I believe a spin-off company from Magic X, which makes some really great devices, announced the XU20. And the XU20 is a handheld that uses the same screen as the Brick, has membrane buttons, runs Android, and has a touch screen. The same screen, but with touch. That just seems perfect. If this device is good for DS because the screen is good for DS and honestly not for any other reason, then that device is great for DS. Like if you want to play DS Pokemon games, for example, if you want to play the underground minigames in Pokemon Platinum, you can do it on the XU20. So that looks thick. Now, the XU20 is on pre-order. There haven't been any reviews of that device yet. I will be getting one, but I will not be releasing the review anytime soon because I prefer to spend some time with the devices and really get to know them. Yeah, like probably the build quality on the XU20 will not be anything like the Brick. That is a much cheaper handheld. But honestly, yeah, I would probably wait for the XU20 reviews. The only downside is XU20 will likely be significantly bigger than the Brick from what I've seen in pictures. So take from that what you will. If you really care about pocketability, then yeah, the Brick will probably still be the thing to beat. But in any other case, then either grab the Miyoo Mini V4 if you don't want to wait, or if you don't mind waiting, just wait for the XU20 reviews. And if there is nothing like seriously wrong with that device, and you don't mind it being less pocketable than the Brick, then I would definitely get that one. So that's it. TrimUI Brick. It's beautiful, but it's shallow. You don't get it because the buttons are shallow. Goodbye. Thank you so much for watching. Do the YouTube thingy, do the subscribe, the buttons, the commenting. Comment if you have the Brick or if you consider getting it. What do you think about it? Like, do you like the Brick or were you planning on getting one? But after, seeing the XU20 decided to wait? Let me know. Let me know what you think. I actually do want to read it. It's not like I'm just saying this to get the engagement for the algorithm, although I am. But I do want to read it, genuinely. So that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching, and fuck off. And I generally do prefer vertical form factors. So yeah, that's why there's so little B-roll. That's